Hi, my name is Ken. I'm an alcoholic. Good to be here. You look like a very sick group. This guy here is unbelievable. If Nick were a fight, they would have stopped it. You know, they said, that's it. You had enough. Go to your corner. And then I met Garth. He said he didn't stutter until he met Nick. And I want to thank Kathleen for picking me up at the airport and showing me Washington and Maryland, West Virginia, Charlottesville, North Carolina. It's okay, she's a teacher. Really two lovely people. And Steve and Nancy and all the folks on the committee, it's always nice to come to these things because, number one, it gets me out of my house. And number two, it lets me meet new folks and then renew old friendships and acquaintances that I've met along the way. You know, sometimes they spread a rumor. I don't know where it starts. A lot of stuff starts and then you don't know where it starts from. But it has to do with, in here, there are us, sick alcoholics. And out there are normal people. Watch my lips. There are no normal people. There are just folks who haven't shared with you, you know. But there are no normal people. I mean, I get a chance to see what normal people buy in the store. Like a lady bought something the other day. It was a mint-flavored dog biscuit. Mint-flavored dog biscuits. I looked at her and said, hey, I want my dog to have good breath. I'll put Levoris in the toilet. You know, like so much for the normal people. You know, I grew up in... Well, I started to tell you something, but then I get a lot of flashback. It's like, you should be in here all the time. It's like there's strobe lights going off, and it's like, you know where to land, but you don't know how to get there. But my friend Liz here and Doug, we shared together in a place called Amarillo, Texas a while back. And to show you how regular people are, not normal people, but regulars, is I was on the plane and I was going to be late. In fact, Doug and I had to switch slots because my plane was late getting in and I couldn't meet the deal to speak. And the guy sitting next to me said, you know, an everyday guy. And he said, where are you going? I said, Amarillo. He said, oh. He said, what are you going for? I said, an AA convention. Right away, you know, it's like, he said, what are you going to do there? I said, speak. He said, how many people will be there? I said, oh, a couple of thousand. He said, are you going to make your connection? I said, no way I'm going to make my connection. He said, my God, what will they do? I said, oh, any one of the 2,000 can give the talk. You know? See, now, regular folks don't understand that. Hey, you understand that, you know? So, you know, I could hear him thinking. I can always tell when somebody's thinking. It looks like they're, you know, getting ready to pass gas. And he says, well, can I ask you a question? I said, sure. He said, why would they bring you all the way over from San Diego if they have 2,000 people there who can give the same talk? I said, just the way they do it, you know? That's the way it is, you know? I don't want to confuse you tonight, so I'm going to tell you up front, I got through school totally unscarred by education. You know, I got sober with guys, you say, how long are you sober? They go, you know? But hey, they're all happy, joyous, and free. A buddy of mine rented the movie The King and I, and then was ticked off because Elvis wasn't in it. I mean, those are the kind of guys. Those are the kind of guys I hang out with. Most of the guys in my neighborhood think that Moby Dick is a venereal disease. I just don't know. They just don't know. These guys just don't know. There's absolutely no way. They're just... Liz knows basically where I grew up. I grew up in a section of Brooklyn. People used to say, how far is it to the subway? We say, we don't know. No one's ever made it. 85% of the suicides in Brooklyn are assisted. It's just the way it is. There's a story told about some guy, Diogenes. He went out with a light to look for one honest man, and when he got to Brooklyn, they stole his lamp. I was really impressed the other night with Steve when he lit this candle. I don't know about you guys, but candles fascinate me. And I believe they fascinate me because it reminds me of my sobriety. See, when I came in, I, like most people, I did not arrive. I was listening to Tom today. I did not arrive in AA on a winning streak. When I got here, my family had moved out of state. My wife had filed for divorce. I wasn't allowed to see my children. I was in the process of going to jail again. I had a habit when I was drinking of finding things before people officially lost them. And I had that look of a newcomer, Did you ever see that newcomer look? They know everything. You tell them something, I know that. They just don't have anything that's working, I know that. But they know everything. Well, that's the way I was. And I went into my first AA meeting, and it was back in New York, and it was July 5th of 1970. And as I walked through the door, they had greeters at the door. And as Liz said, you didn't get in and get out unless somebody shook your hand. And I went over to them, and they said, what's your name? We know you're a newcomer. And I thought, how would they know that? Now, today I can see how they knew that. I was the only one there in a blue wool suit with a shirt and tie. And I had on an Oxford shirt. And everybody else was sitting there. It was muggy and warm and sitting there in shorts. And they intuitively knew that I was a newcomer. So they asked me my name, and I wrote it, and I pasted it on my chest, and it was a beautiful red tag with the name Ken on it. And I had a guy come up to me that night, and he said, I know you're a newcomer, so sit down front. He said, that's where the message is. So I sat up front. And I can't tell you a whole lot about what went on that night, but afterward, that guy told me he was going to be my temporary sponsor. In July 5th this past year, I celebrated 21 years of sobriety, and that guy is still my temporary sponsor. I don't know if it's going to work, But he looks like he needs the work, My mom used to say, drunk or sober, you're no day at the beach. And that's the way I am. I can be right in the middle of a real bad idea and get a worse one. But I started to tell you about these candles. And when Steve went over and lit that candle, I was just frozen on him and that candle for that moment. Because when I came in here, the way I reflect on it today is that the spiritual light inside of me had gone out. If it was flickering, I won't argue with that, but it seemed to me like it was gone out. And my sponsor came with his spiritual candle, and he lit my spiritual candle. And from the time he lit it, I had my own light. It was no longer his light, it was now my light again. And it was in my custody to take care of it and to pass it on. And that's been the whole essence of my sobriety, is to keep that spiritual light lit and to pass that candle on to other people. And he always used to say that if the path is well lit, fewer people will tumble and fall. And that's the way I looked at it. And I know something about candles that most people don't know, and that is that the candle, the light that was lit here the other night, is not going to be the same light we put out on Sunday. It's going to be a different flame. Because as that wick burns beyond our ability to see it, one light is going out and another light is being lit instantaneously. And that's the way the change comes about in Alcoholics Anonymous. When I got to Alcoholics Anonymous, it was at that time, a long, long time ago. Safe sex then was lock the car door. That's how far back it was, The Bible says that premarital sex is a sin. The way we did it in Brooklyn was a crime. I mean, it was like, it was unbelievable. The end result was we all proposed with the same two words. You're what? My wife and I read all the sex manuals and tried both positions. You know, like when I was drinking, she used to say, let's make love in the dark. I thought that was romantic, but that hiding really made it impossible. You know, like it was like... And so when he said to me about the candle business, about passing this thing on to me, I bought into it. Now, I've had the privilege, and I'm really sad for people who don't have this privilege. It doesn't mean you're going to go out and get drunk. It doesn't mean that somehow you won't be able to stay sober. What it means is you haven't had this privilege. I had the privilege of going with my sponsor on 12-step calls. That's a privilege. Particularly in the early days. In the city, they never called them 12-step calls. In my neighborhood, they said, go put the hit on this guy. That's the way we talk. Go put the hit on him. You know, take him out. Bring him to a meeting. So we used to put the hit on these guys and bring them to a meeting. And I got to go to the houses with my sponsor. So my actual first position in AA of any responsibility was bedroom watcher. My sponsor and I would go to somebody's house. We'd ring the door. Some future Al-Anon would answer. And they'd say, you guys from AA? Yeah. And they always said the same thing. It's upstairs. You know? So you had a chance to go upstairs and catch this number. And as soon as we got in the room, my sponsor would say, go sit in the corner. So I went and sat in the corner. And I had a chance to see him weave his magic. And his magic consisted of a very simple set of steps. And that is, the bed would be shaken and the guy would be shaken. And he would sit next to him and sometimes put his hand on his, or sometimes just put his hand on the bed. And he would start by telling him it was going to be okay. He knew about such things. And then he'd start weaving his story a little bit about what he had done. And within some fairly short period of time, the bed would start to quiet down. And then the man in it would start to quiet down. And he'd start to shake his head and say, yeah, I've done that. Yeah, I know what that is. Yeah, I felt that. And there was this instant identification of one alcoholic with another. It wasn't confused then. It was very simple. We were all alcoholics. You know, there weren't all these other deals like, you know, sex without partners and, you know. Oh, you've heard of them? Yeah. I went to one meeting. It got out of hand. But the focus of this whole thing would be this guy would then come either that night or the next night to a meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous. And he would get a name tag. And I would get to watch him start from scratch the process of recovery. So when people talk about such things as, does this work? Do you think it might work for me? Do you think it could work for Larry? Or whatever the deal is. See, I don't have a philosophy about recovery anymore. I have an experience. I have a personal experience of my own life, and then I have the personal experience of watching numerous others do the exact same thing. No deviance, the exact same thing. They came, got a big book. Most good meetings have one. We call it the owner's manual, you know. You have an owner's manual now, so if you have a question about it, it's like, let's see, where will I find that? And the big book is written so as to deceive even the most deceptive mind. You know, like if you want to find out how it works, I wonder where they put that in a book. You know? I wonder if there's a chapter in here to the employer. Ooh. So, you know, they mark it so nobody gets lost. Nobody gets lost. And so I went for a couple of months and I got a chance to go on these in quotes, 12-step calls. And I kept being taken back by the fact that no matter what meetings we went to or how many I went to, people would always come up and say, hi, Ken, you're a newcomer. Until one night, I had just taken a 90-day token. I was about maybe 95, 96 days sober. And I looked around the room, my home group, and I noticed that everybody had a blue name tag but me. I still had this red name tag. So I sat there and I copped a resentment. And as soon as the meeting was over, I ran up to the secretary and I said, "Hey!" Got his attention. I said, "How come I have a red name tag and everybody else has a blue one?" He said, "Oh, you're ready for a blue one." Took it off, put the blue one on. You can't slip too much by me. It's the kind of guy I am, I notice those things. And that's the kind of mind I had at that time, Somebody give me a cured ham, I want to know, what did he have? That's the way I thought. I would see signs saying the road closed, and I would hit 6, 7 pylons just to check them out. That's the way I thought. And I thought things were funny that nobody else thought were funny. Did you guys ever go through that? I'd be laughing, and everybody else would be calling 911. I'd pull up to the toll in the Holland Tunnel. They'd be backed up with traffic all over the place. I'd pull up and I'd say, "I'll have a large fry, a chocolate shake, and a hamburger." And the guy would say, "We don't have any food here." And I'd say, "Hey, you better get some. The line's really backing up." I thought that kind of stuff was fun. I had that kind of a mind. It was just did it. It was like, I can remember being in situations where I'd have to appear before judges. I don't know why they call them grand juries. I never thought they were so hot, And they would say things were wrong with you, and then people would look at you and say, real heavy questions like, "Why did you do this?" As though you would have a clue, And you're hoping he gives you a hint so you can run with it, And we got those same kinds of people today, except they're much more intellectual. We went through a deal now, thank God it's on the downslide, of issues. People had issues. I watched these guys with these issues. It was like watching somebody milk a mouse. It was a lot of effort, but no results, Most of the people involved were dead. And they were still working it out, I'd say, why don't you get into that chapter in the action, in the owner's manual. Chuck that stuff. Get on with something else. Do something worthwhile with your life. And then they all want to find careers. I come from Southern California where nobody gets a job. They get careers. When I came in, they said, "Hey, you, get a job. Get off the street. Make your mother proud. Try to do something that's not indictable, It wasn't so complicated, you had to go get a job. That was a very tough thing for me because it meant a career change, My sponsor talked about getting up at a regular hour, go to a regular place, staying the whole day. 5 days a week. I thought, wonder if this will ever catch on, I'd be there 15 minutes and I figured there's no future in this, that's just the way my mind was. But I followed the book. I did what the book said. Now, you can best describe me when I came in as an ice cube. That's how flexible I was. And that's about as abrasive as I was. And if you wanted anything out of me, you had to chunk it out of me. You had to chip it out of me. I wasn't given a whole lot. And as I started to go through those steps, which were suggested to me, the thing that happened was my mind began to go away, and I began to turn into water, and to me that water was my consciousness was coming back. My consciousness was coming back. I became aware of things, How many people in the room have less than a year? Can I see your hands? Oh, that's terrific. Good. Welcome here. That's great. You'll go to a lot of meetings where they'll talk about the promises, but the promises come after you do a whole lot of work. But I'm going to talk to you about the early bird promises, that they don't talk about much at meetings. And these come to you usually in the first year, and that is, you will instinctively know what city, state, and country you're in. You know? You'll answer the door when it rings, you know? You'll pick up the phone when you hear it. You know, you'll just start to do that stuff. And at some point, you know, don't get excited about this because it will be a while, but at some point, you'll have a solid bowel movement. And you'll probably think it's a spiritual experience. You'll say, oh, there is a God. You know? Now, these things come to pass, sometimes quickly, sometimes slowly, but they are coming, you know. Just don't get caught up in them, you know, just do the stuff here. So I started to get melted down doing these steps. And my sponsor was one of these guys. He was a very loving, caring guy, and I would call him and I would say things like, Packy, I can't see my kids. And he'd say, good, they're better off without you. I don't think my wife and I are going to get back together. Well, that, you know, thank God for her. I'd say, I'm going to jail. He said, that's probably where you belong, you know, like... And then after he gave me all this sympathy, he would say, hey, Ken, maybe you'll get lucky and die tonight. And he'd hang up, you know, like... And I'd be on the other end. Change my course of direction. But what happened with this water is he would always use the same phrase, and I don't hear it too much anymore. He'd say, turn up the heat. Turn up the heat. Turn up the heat. And I used to always say to him, what does that mean? And he'd say, take that action. Do those steps. Don't worry about this other stuff. Put that on the back burner, put this on the front burner, and turn up the heat. And you know, he was a very, very wise man. By educational standards, he wasn't real sharp. But he was a real, real wise man. And he was a wise man because he knew that if I was busy doing the right things, good things would happen down the line. And he knew that I needed that to create the good habits. I didn't have any good habits. You know, I just didn't have good habits. I hear people say today, like, how do you create a habit? And I tell them, you repeat an act. Is that brilliant? I learned that from my sponsor. They say, Ken, how do you get a habit? I say, I repeat an act. Wow, that guy's sharp, that Ken. I told you, you can't slip too much by me. And so that's what I did. And then what I came to find out, which I didn't know then, I know a lot of this stuff looking back, but I didn't know it at the time. That's why I don't share a lot about what it was like when I was drinking. Because some of the things I remember most vividly never happened. You know? That's just the way it is. You know what I mean? But they might as well. I've lived them, you know. I've been in places I've never gone to. I've been with people I've never met. You know, I've done things that I wouldn't have had to do in the first place. Probably be scared to. But boy, I get telling my story, they get mixed in there. So what happened was, he said, turn up the heat. So what happened was, to me, is that behind the 12 steps, there are 12 principles, which people usually don't talk a whole lot about. And that's why every AA room I go into, I count lamps. I look for, like, the number 12, because it's very significant to me. And every room always produces something. And you guys went to a lot of work to do this to help me out tonight. But you have 12 doors. And each doorway allows you to get out. And that's what each step did for me. It allowed me to get out. It allowed me to get out of a way of living that wasn't working for me. It allowed me to try something new and exciting. It allowed me the joy of living. It got me on to living. You know, I had gone to a lot of trouble without being aware of it to avoid living at any length. I didn't know how to do it. And then when I got to that 11th step, that really turned up the heat for me. You know, spiritual awareness is the principle. But you get to 99 degrees, you never get to 100 degrees. Because at 99 degrees point something, the water ceased to exist. It turns to something else. Becomes vapor. Becomes totally spiritual. And you can never go back to being what you were again. Never. It's just gone. And then you keep it that way by doing the service work that comes with 12. I know a lot of folks in AA who have a breakdown at step 11 because somehow they feel they don't have to do it. You know, I'm doing these other things, Ken. I'm working on the 4th step. I'm working on it. I'm making them. And you say, well, how much time in the day do you allow to have a conscious contact with God? Oh, you mean that prayer and meditation stuff? Yeah, I see it. It's right there between 10 and 12. Yeah, I catch that action. But do you do it? And the book is real specific because it talks so much about consciousness. You know? This program is not about an absence. This program is about a presence. It says it real clear in step 2. It says, when I began to develop the consciousness of His presence, I lost my fear of today, tomorrow, and the hereafter. And if I want to maintain that consciousness, I have to allow time in my day. I know the days are so hectic. Oh, I know that. I know every day of everyone's life is so hectic they can't squeeze in 15 minutes in the morning and 15 minutes at night. Overbearing. And so if you do that, if you don't do that 11th step, you have a breakdown. But you watch the people who do that 11th step, they have a breakthrough. They come to know about a power that's greater than themselves that they don't even bother to try to explain to anyone else, because in the words and the translation it gets lost. This is a deal where you either experience it or you talk about it. If you talk about it a whole lot, chances are you haven't experienced it. And if you experienced it, chances are you're not talking about it a whole lot. Because it just scares the newcomer. As it is, the newcomers have a tough enough time with this. To thine own self be true. You know, I love talking about truth. People get confused about truth. They confuse knowledge with truth. Knowledge informs. Truth transforms. You know the truth, it sets you free. Isn't that exciting? Feel like the Reverend Ike. You know the truth. But that's the deal here. And you know, I know some things about truth that are real good. First of all, it's always simple. The book says all good ideas are simple. This one too. You know, it's always simple. Second thing is it doesn't come on the installment plan. It comes all at once. You either know the truth or you don't know the truth. There's no in between. And the third thing is it's always paradoxical. That's why alcoholics love it. Newcomer comes in, has that look to begin with, like, what's going on here? And you say, you want to win? Yeah, surrender. Okay? You want to keep it? Yeah, give it away. I think I'm getting the gist of it now, you know? Don't know what's going on. And the newcomers, you can always tell them, they're always talking about what they lost. And you can always tell the old-timers, they're talking about what they're trying to get rid of. I'm trying to get rid of this, I'm trying to get rid of that, I'm trying to get rid of that. You know, it's football season, and whenever I'm working with a newcomer, I tell them football season is great because all alcoholics are punt returners. Every one of us. The difference is between the newcomer and the old-timer. The newcomer, having a very short memory, forgets the pain of being hit. So he'll run everything out, even in the end zone. 10 yards deep, yeah, I can do this. Let me go. And the guy's coming down and say, he's not going to do this, is he? And then you watch the old-timers. They fair catch everything. I'm not taking any hits. And as soon as they have it cradled, they hand it to a newcomer, you know. And I love reading the big book because it's so simple to read, even for guys like me who are unscarred by education. You know, there's nothing complicated in it, except the people who try to read it. The book itself is very simple. It tells you exactly what you're supposed to do. Now, there's another thing that happens, which I'll broach on for a minute because I think it's real important, and that is a lot of times well-meaning people will share with you something that has worked for them, but it's not part of the big book. It's not part of the program. You know, and they'll mean it well, and it's something that has worked in their life, and it's not like they're bad people. They're just sharing something with you from their experience, but it's not part of the program. And a lot of folks have trouble with that particular thing and feel like they're not doing the program. And the two of them don't blend. In some areas, it's no sex in the first year. Have you ever seen those people who go a whole year? I mean, they have all the poise of a cat on the freeway, they give a whole new meaning to the word talk, like, whoa, And then nowhere in the big book does it say that. Nowhere. It says some of us believe this, some of us believe that. You can get caught up in that stuff even after you're here a while. I do on occasion. I tell people, you don't want to keep an alcoholic away from sex. The average alcoholic stays away from sex for a year. By the time he gets back to it, he'll forget who gets tied up. That's just the way we are. And I still get caught up in that today. Some guy got me several months back. He said, Ken, you don't know anything at all about sex until you do it in front of a mirror. So I read this chapter into action. So I tried it. I damn near wrecked the car. Oh, you guys can laugh. You weren't there. You're like, yeah. And the thing that threw me off were those side view mirrors. They said objects may appear larger than they really are, So you got to be careful what you tell me, But this is one of the reasons I love to come out and do this. I love to see people laugh. I love to hear laughter. And being unscarred by education, I used to read a lot. At one time in my life, I had 4 years in an institution where I had plenty of time to read. And one of the things I came to find out about laughter is that it's one of the healthiest things in the world you can do. First of all, they're finding out today that when you laugh a lot, you produce endorphins. And this thing gives you more oxygen, makes you real healthy, fights pain, does all kinds of good stuff. In fact, the three things that produce the most are exercising, jogging, and sex, and laughing. So if you can get someone to have sex with you and laugh while you're jogging, you'll be a healthy cat, Laughing is a kind of birth control in California. But it is. And when you're laughing, I know something else about laughing, too, that's real important, is that you cannot laugh and think at the same time. So every time you laugh, you're getting a respite from you. If there were a song in AA, it would be, I am always on my mind. I am always on my mind. And the third thing I know about laughter is that once you hear yourself laugh, you say, it can't be that bad. I'm laughing. It can't be that bad. And the fourth thing I know about laughter is most people have forgotten how to laugh. They just forget how to laugh. As somebody mentioned today about, I think it was Tom talking about the disease of alcohol. I love that when people say, this disease kills. No shit. Is this a new news bulletin or what? Did I miss the early edition or pictures at 11 or what? But that's not what the book says. The book says happy, joyous, free. It says we're not a glum lot. I thought that was something you bought at Pep Boys, It says if the newcomer couldn't see us laughing, why would they want to come? Everybody's sitting around like, I got a great disease. Yeah, I'm real happy to be here. Coming up on a 2-year cake. Woo. You look at some of these people, you say, they missed their calling. They should have been hemorrhoids. You say, and the book tells us what? If you're not happy, chances are you'll go back to drinking. It says that in the book, the big book. Not one I'm making up. It says if he's not happy in his sobriety, chances are he'll drink again. Boy, I'm happy in my sobriety. I see stuff all over the place that keeps me laughing. The other day I saw a bumper sticker. It could be the future logo of AA. It says, which way did they go? You like it so far? Okay. Then underneath it said, how fast are they moving? Then it said, how many are there? And then in big letters it says, I must find them. I am their leader, You know? Say, wow. I like that kind of stuff. Several years back, they were shooting each other on the LA freeway. And people adjusted to that with bumper stickers. Said, "Cover me, I'm changing lanes," you know? You know? "Don't shoot, this is my off-ramp." "Yeah, there's us in here and the normal people out there." Amazing to me. So I get a chance to laugh at everybody. We really laugh a lot at you. That's why you should be laughing at yourself, because everybody else is, you know. And you come to the realization that life is a joke and we're the punchline. And if you miss that punchline, you miss the best joke, you know. I bet God looks down sometimes. He said, "Can you believe they're doing this?" I gave them everything they needed, tons of it. They just don't know what to do with it, you know. And that's true. And you get a chance to laugh a lot in AA because you go to meetings and you hear other people share and you say, "Boy, I did that." And you watch people react to different things. I don't know about you, but I used to hang out in bars in the city where they had signs over the bar would say, like, "If you didn't bring it in, please, please don't touch it." You know? We noticed that's how all the barroom facials start, you know? And so I would drink in these places, the Bucket of Blood and all these good places in the city. And the deal was they had 5-foot bartenders who just could put the drinks up so when the fighting started, they would keep serving everybody, you know? And I would hang out in those places. They were always exciting, you know? People, you left early and you always missed it, whatever it was. People would say the next day, "Boy, you left a little early." Happened right after you left. So I'd stay the next night to make sure nothing happened when I was missing. And this would go on. And then towards the end, my wife got real into this drinking. She would say things like, "That's your second drink." I'd say, "Why don't you go ahead and finish your breakfast?" My wife didn't detach with love. She abandoned with disgust. You know, And you know, I heard a lot of people put it, and I never heard anyone do it any nicer than Tom did this morning. We had just reached a point in our life where we were going two separate directions. And you know, I got back with my wife and kids. And we stayed married another 12 years in sobriety, and then we divorced. And my kids that I wasn't allowed to see by court order stayed with me, and I got to be a single parent. And that was a real treat. And it wasn't like my wife had been a bad person. She's a very, very good person. It was just time for her to go another direction. And you know, that's one of the things I learned in Alcoholics Anonymous. I learned a lot about love here that I just didn't know. I just didn't know. See, I always thought love had to do with the other person. I didn't know that love just has to do with you. You know, my sponsor used to say, "Go watch the flowers," and I could never understand that until he taught me one day that a rose gives off its scent. It doesn't matter who's passing by, because that's what roses do. And it doesn't say, "I'm going to give it off to this person and not to that person," or "this person deserves it but not that." It just gives it off. It's pure love. No conditions attached. And I learned that here. And this guy used to say to me all the time when I would call him going through this real tough period of my life, and he'd say, "Just remember this. No matter how kind that judge is, you're going to get custody of you." You know. So you want to be the best person you can be. And so I try to become the best person I could be. And I don't know about you guys, but I grew up in a different era. And this is young people. But I grew up with songs like "Till the End of Time." Whoa! "I'll be loving you always." Now it was time for me to go out and date. And they were playing songs like "Beat It, Whip It, Choke It, Kill It." You know, like I was like... And I wasn't so sure I wanted to find out what they were talking about, you know. But I had a chance to do something in sobriety that I thought I'd never have to do. I remember a gal had asked me out over to her house for dinner, which was like a date. And I hadn't been dating, and the kids kind of forced me out of the house. Like, get out of the house. You're getting too comfortable staying home. So I went over there. And the only way I knew how to date show you, I went and bought candy and flowers. And showed up with candy and flowers. And she opened the door and she said, God love you. She said, you're Ricky Nelson in a John Travolta world. But it allowed me to start to experience other things that I didn't know anything about. And that's the wonderful part about Alcoholics Anonymous, and you had speakers already touch this, and you have several more that are coming, Karen and Lynn, and who else will be, Doug, and you'll hear more of this, is the fact that it doesn't make any difference what's going on out there. What makes the difference is what's going on in here. And if you're okay in here, then that's just paper mache, I read a lot about this guy recently, William James, because he's mentioned in the big book, Variety of Spiritual Experience. And I didn't know a whole lot about him, and I read about him. And a lot of people, if you know this, it'll only take 2 or 3 minutes, but William James was a doctor. He was an MD. He got educated at Harvard, and he taught at Harvard. And his whole belief was that if you could understand the science of the body, you could understand the world. And then he came to the realization that just wasn't true. So he went on and became a psychologist, and he taught psychology at Harvard University. He wrote some of the classic books in the field, psychology. And then he realized that's not the answer. And then intuitively, he came to the realization that if you were going to live happy, joyous, and free in this world, you were going to have to live beyond reason. See, there'll come a time in sobriety, everyone's sobriety, who's sitting here, where your logic won't be any good. Your logic just won't work. And if you haven't made that transition from the head to the heart, you're going to be in agony. You're going to be in great pain. And that's when you'll find, hopefully, that 11th step, and you'll either have that breakdown or that breakthrough. And it's going to happen to everybody, and some people it happens more than once. It's not just a one-time shot. And you come to find out that you don't have to explain what's most important. In fact, you don't have to explain anything. There are no questions because there are no answers. And there are no answers because there are no questions. There's nothing to become because we already are. It gets real cute here. Real cute. And we mention that part of the book where it says, we were crossing over the bridge of reason. It's a great metaphor. And we couldn't touch down on the other shore. And they're not talking about something out there, they're talking about something in here. We couldn't touch that great reality because we weren't willing to go beyond reason. And the moment you make that leap, like when the water hits 100, it's a quantum leap. It's not a step, it's a leap. And once you make it, you go from one state of living to another state of living, and you're never the same again. And you don't want to tell too many people about it because they'll think you lost your mind. And they're right. See, this isn't about having a great mind. This is about getting past the mind and living on a whole different plane. Bill called it the fourth dimension. The book says we'll develop a vital sixth sense. We won't have to see it, touch it, smell it, taste it, feel it. We'll just know. It says we'll walk with our heads in the clouds with Him and our feet firmly planted on the ground so as to be of service to our fellow man. We will intuitively know. We'll suddenly realize this is not a mind game. In fact, this is a game where only losers can win. And the price of admission is your old ideas. And it gets real, real simple. You know, I have this reoccurring dream. And in this dream, it could be here in Hagerstown, all the caterpillars come together for a convention. They come from Columbia. Some of them take several hours. They come from Glen Burnie. They come from down there at Harper's Ferry, and they all end up here in Hagerstown. And they all start talking about the end. The end. And they say, we're getting close to the end. And when the end happens, we die. We spent our whole life crawling around, and now we die. And then one of them, who's been going to Caterpillar AA, he says, that's not the truth. The truth of the matter is, the moment that we think we're dying, we're reborn. And we become these beautiful butterflies. And we're not allowed anymore to crawl on the ground. We fly in the air. And we get to see everything we never saw before that was always there. We just couldn't see it. We have a new vision for us. Some of the old timers say, he's in denial. He can't face death. But that one knows. And knowing, he can pass it on to others. And some of them get the same idea too. I don't want to ruin anyone's night. Alcoholics Anonymous, we use the word change a lot. And nothing changes. Absolutely nothing changes. You just see it differently. You have a different awareness of it. And that's why it says improve your conscious contact with God. We've been asleep, now we're awake. At the end of step 2, where it talks about His presence, it says we're reborn. We're not born, we're reborn. It's not like we're coming for the first time. We've been here, we've just been asleep, and now we're awake. And you get to see it all, and you say, wow, it was here all the time. Why didn't I see it? Even the word, I hear people talk about, Ken, why do we pray? And why do we have meditation? And it came to me 2 or 3 years ago when I was praying and meditating. The only reason I pray and meditate is to help me remember. It's to help me to remember what I forgot. And that is, there is one who has all power. That one is God. May you find Him now. That's why when people come to me and say, this is going to happen in 6 months, and that's going to happen in 5 months, I said, well, God won't be there. And they say, what do you mean God won't be there? I said, because God is always in the now. That's why we say, there is one who has all power. That one is God. May you find Him. Isn't that exciting? People say, well, what about there and then? There is no there and then. There's only here and now. When you get to be there and then, it's here and now. You take the word now and you spell it backwards, it's one. W-O-N. When you've learned to live in the now, you've won. That's what this game is about. It's living in the now. Taking this moment as though it were eternity and living it to the fullest. And then when you're done with it, you're done with it. It's not like the next day getting up and saying, That's why we have a step. It's in the owner's manual. It's called a 10th step. It says at the end of the day, we constructively review the day. Not destructively, constructively. Then the next day, what do we pray for? Intuitive thought or decision. We don't pray for great ideas. Can you imagine? The 3 words you never want to hear an alcoholic say is, I've been thinking. I immediately go to a bomb shelter, particularly if they had a lot of time, I mean, we have those kind of minds, we can take any solution and turn it into a problem, We scratch stuff that doesn't itch. We go to a wedding, we want to be the bride. We go to a funeral, we want to be the corpse. And we want to do it very humbly. So I don't want to hear about your thinking. When people tell me I've been thinking, I say, well, go back and read that chapter, Into Thinking. Call me right back. And they say, Ken, there's no chapter in this thinking. This is in the action. This is action, Jackson. Get out there and do it. Make mistakes. Just try not to repeat the same ones. Go do things. Risk. Have fun. This is about it. In 1983, I made a decision to go and volunteer in the hospice program with people who were terminally ill. Now, that was an intuitive idea. And the very first guy they sent me out to work with was very angry, 71-year-old guy who was very angry. And I said to him, what are you angry about? And he said, you wouldn't understand. And finally, after some coaxing, he said, I'm 39 years sober, and I should have gotten a cake a couple of months ago, and I'm too sick to get a cake. And I said, you're kidding me. That's a lie. That's not what I said. I said no, and it was a 4-letter word, began with S, ended with T. I won't mention it. And I said, you're kidding me. I said, I'm 13 years sober. And he said, no kidding. Group level stuff. And so I said to him, you load up on that liquid morphine they're giving you, and I'll take you to a noontime meeting. So he loaded up, and I took him to a noontime meeting. And he never talked about any of that stuff. He just talked about how grateful he was to be at that meeting. And God has a great sense of humor, my God. Sometimes he does bank shots just to show off. And Stanley was only supposed to live 3 to 6 months, and he lived another year. And I got to give him a 40-year cake. And I took him back to that same meeting. And people call me on the phone, whimpers and whiners. Ken, she's leaving. Ken, I lost my job. I said, come on over. And then I take him down to see Stanley. And by that time, Stanley had a colostomy, and he had IVs in his arms, and he was on oxygen. He was dying of emphysema. And he had cancer. And I'd bring him in, and I'd say, Stanley, this guy's having a tough time. And he'd whip that oxygen mask off. And he'd say, wow, another day sober and Alcoholics Anonymous. Are we lucky or what? Is God good? And Stanley would go for about 2 minutes until the oxygen ran out. And so we'd stay and visit with him. Stanley taught me a lot. He taught me it isn't the circumstances that makes the man. It's the man who makes the circumstances. That you can give when you're laying down. That giving never has to stop. And he always used to remind me when I left, Ken, there'll be days when you can't get help. But there's never a day when you can't give it. And that always recycled in my head. So we'd stay, and then I'd take this bozo out in the hall, and I'd say, now tell me about your problems. Well, the him and horde. And you see, the book is right. We make our own problems. God doesn't give us any misery. We create it. It's because we want stuff. We want to hold on to stuff that we probably should be getting rid of. And we want to get stuff that we probably have no business getting. It's like we know. And that's why I sleep at night. I love going to sleep. It's like meditation for me. I figure that I sleep 8 hours every day. By the time I'm 75, I will have slept 25 years. And some power, some force that I won't even attempt to describe or explain to you will have sustained me when I was perfectly asleep, with no idea as to what was going on. So if that force can take care of me 1/3 of my life when I'm asleep, why not let it take care of me the rest of the time when I'm awake? It became real obvious to me. Real obvious. And I get to know that my mind has a way of racing ahead to a conclusion that's most of the time wrong. I watch folks worry. 90% of what we worry about never happens, and the other 10 happens so fast you don't have time to worry. Just boom, it's there. It's like the guy who was 90 years old who showed up at the sperm bank. And the lady said, just what do you think you're here for? He says, I'm here to leave a deposit. And she said, sir, you're 90 years old. He says, hey, I'm here to leave a deposit. So she gave him a little bottle and sent him down the hall. And after about 45 minutes, she became terribly concerned. She went down and on the door, and she heard this pathetic voice say, come in. And so she went in, and he was in the corner. My God, it looked like he was wrestling with a gorilla. And he looked at her and he said, Miss, he said, I've used my right hand. He said, I've used my left hand. He said, I even banged it off the wall. He said, I can't get the lid off this jar. You know, like... I see you guys like to race to conclusions too, huh? See, if you can listen to the power that's in the room when people are laughing, it's unbelievable. And you know, the same folks who have trouble with laughter have trouble with the spiritualness of AA. Because jokes are just like God. You'll go along to a certain point, and then what you think is going to happen next doesn't happen. That's what makes a joke a joke. You're expecting something... The lady in the background, huh? She thought it was a Pee Wee Herman joke or something. But that's what makes it funny. It doesn't come out the way you think. And that's the way it is with God. You think you know you like what's going to come next, and it never works out. You know, I'm at that point in my life where I'm looking back probably on more years than I have to look forward to. I don't know, but it looks that way. And the thing that I'm becoming more and more painfully aware of is the preciousness of each moment. And the other thing I'm becoming more and more aware of is that nothing bad ever happened to me. Nothing bad ever happened to me. Now, I wouldn't have told you that about some incidents, but everything that happened in my life led me to the next point. And at the next point, I got some guidance and some awareness that led me to the next point. And it gave me my experience. And today, I have a lot of experience. And as you're here longer, you're going to need less and less faith because you're going to have more and more experience. And as you have more experience, you don't have as much need for faith. You just know, hey, it's going to work out. I don't know how. I don't even know who the cast of characters is going to be. God will do a bank shot. He'll send me over here to do something, and something will go on over here. Next thing you know, it'll all be okay again. And people say, you live your life like that? I say, you bet. People say, you're expecting miracles. I said, yeah, I'm in AA. I see people come out of dumpsters, become lawyers. Not that that's a great transition, but, you know. Hi, Doug. But you see that, you know. Some guy, you say, you know, in Alcoholics Anonymous, after a while, the alcoholic just starts lucking out if he's here. You know, somebody say, you're so dumb you can't even name 2 pronouns. The guy goes, who, me? You know, that kind of stuff. It just starts to happen. And that's what life is. It's having a lot of fun. So that when you get your ticket punched, you've had the ride. And along the way, you help people. You know, they had this guy, the Dalai Lama. He spoke in L.A. a while back. And the Dalai Lama, people paid $100 to go hear him at the forum. He had already won the Nobel Prize for Peace. And people thought, wow, when this guy comes out to talk, it's going to be earth-shattering. So they had some real motivational speakers in front of him. And then finally they said, here's the Dalai Lama. And this guy walked to the podium, looked out at the audience, gave a nice smile, and he said, our primary purpose for being here is to help one another. Turned around, like he was walking away, and then he had an intuitive thought. And he came back and he said, some of us, because of our current nature, cannot do this. So our primary purpose is not to hurt anyone. And he went and sat down. And people are going, $100? I drove up from San Diego. What else was there to say? Help someone. And if you can't help them, don't hurt them. We say the same thing in the big book. I love to read the chapter Working with Others. It reminds me of what we're all about here. One alcoholic working with another alcoholic. There are 3 nevers in that chapter that I make people underline if I sponsor them. The first never is on the first page of that chapter. It says, what makes us of unique value to this person is our own drinking experience. Therefore, we never criticize We never criticize. I don't know what part of that word gives people trouble, whether it's the nu or the vu, but like it's pretty comprehensive. Never, And then later on in that chapter it says we never force ourselves on another alcoholic. We never do this. And the third never, which is real important, is we never talk down to another alcoholic as though we were on some moral or spiritual hilltop. See, we're all swimming in the same water here. Black, white, straight, gay, employed, unemployed, whether you got here through a spin dry or you parachuted in, doesn't make any difference. You're in your seat, and you're welcome here. And you come to find out that we're all together. That's why prayer and meditation are so important to me, because as I said before, it helps me remember what I forget. And even that word, remember, means I become a member again. I remember. I join up. I'm part of the whole. My problem has always come in trying to be different from everybody else. Instead of just saying, hey, I'm part of this. This slob drinks, I drink. This slob has problems, I have problems. When I first got here, I said truth is paradoxical. Why do you think, try to do this logically. Don't hurt yourselves. You're having trouble with drinking. Your life is uncontrollable. You go and hang out with people who admittedly have an uncontrollable life and are problem drinkers. And therein lies the solution. Try drawing that on the board. But that's the way it is. And you come here and you have a lot of fun. I know there's a 13-step dance, so I'm going to wind down about 2 or 3 minutes, so start to pick out your targets. Don't look for Miss Right, look for Miss Right Now, or maybe Miss Perhaps, Take your time. I'm going to take 2 or 3 more minutes and then go. The lights are on now. Now's the time to look. I'm talking to the men. I know the women don't think like this. Out in California, they have some great trolling outfits, Spandex is in now. It's like, come hurt me, But I want to thank everybody for inviting me to come here. My sobriety is a real great thing in my life. It is my life. It isn't like I'm sober and then I have a life. My sobriety is my life. It's not about figuring out anything anymore. It's just about getting up in the morning and living life one day at a time. I've told people many times before that I'm unscarred by education, but I used to read a lot, and I still do. And I know that 97% of the people who die in this country die laying down. So when my alarm goes off in the morning, I get up. I think that's rather clever. And as soon as I'm up, I want to go screw something up because I don't want to lose my skills, And I have people say, supposing I make a mistake, we're counting on it, Go and do it. I've been all over this country, sometimes through invitation, sometimes being chased. And I can tell you, I've never seen a statue to a critic yet. Never. Columbus has his own day. He didn't know where he was a couple of times. We even threw in a Monday for him. So go do something. Risk. Get out there and live. And I'm going to tell you a story about my mom, who was one hell of a gal. Raised 7 kids. And like Liz and her family, I'm the youngest of 7, and nobody else in my family ever made it to AA. No one. And the end result of that was in October of '85, I had a sister go in the hospital who had just celebrated her 54th birthday. And she had cirrhosis, and she hemorrhaged until Christmas Day, and she died Christmas Day weighing about 60-some pounds. And that year, Christmas was on a Wednesday, and we buried her. And we buried her Saturday. And I went back to San Diego, and I went to a big AA function New Year's Eve, and New Year's Day my brother died. And we buried him from the same funeral home. And my mom kind of just gave up, and she died. And Stanley died. And a fellow I was sponsoring committed suicide. And in an 18-month period, I got to go to the cemetery 11 times. And I can tell you from experience that all the headstones are exactly alike. It has your name, when you were born, a dash, and when you died. And that dash on any headstone isn't more than 5 or 6 inches. And that dash represents life. And I don't know where you guys are right now, but I'm along in the dash. And I just don't have time to be worried about what's going on in Timbuktu. I don't have mythical problems. I'm not looking at issues. I'm not worried about what happened to me when I came out of my mother's womb. I think it happened. You know? I don't have time to be upset or angry with anyone. I stop fighting everyone and everything because I just don't have the time to waste. We encourage gossip in the men's group that I go to. And if it's not positive, you're fined. See, rather than make up a story about someone that isn't true, that's harmful, if you're going to make a story up, make them out to be something worthwhile. If you're going to gossip, gossip positive. And don't repeat stuff unless you know it to be fact, because a lot of times innocent people are hurt by that. And the other thing is you know, I was in a club recently and a guy came in and sat down and we talked, and when he left, another guy came over and said, "Ken, I am so upset." I said, "Why?" He said, "That guy sat with you for a half hour and he didn't tell the truth once." I said, "You know that for a fact?" He said, "Yes." I said, "It doesn't matter. 6 months ago, he didn't talk to me. Now at least he's talking." So if you have to lie to stay here, lie in the early stages. Do whatever you have to do to keep coming back. Do your best not to have to go out again. This seat is yours. We've been saving it for you. Just come and get it. And I'm going to tell you this story about my mom. And sit down. I hope by now you spotted your targets. But my mom raised all these kids, and whenever someone had to go without, it was always her. And she used to tell this story about Johnny. And Johnny went to a parochial school. And next to the parochial school is a church. That's the way they do it. It's called a captive audience. And Johnny would run in there in the morning and he'd kneel down and he'd say, "Hello, God, this is Johnny. I just want to tell you I'm here." And then he'd boogie out. And he'd go in there at lunchtime and he'd go there after school and he'd go there on the weekends and he'd go there holidays. And that was his whole spiritual life. "Hello, God, this is Johnny. I just want to tell you I'm here." And my mom would say, with an Irish brogue, when he got to be 12, he contracted polio. And at that time, there was no cure for polio. And so he was in a room and he was dying, and he was surrounded by his school friends and his chums and his family. And my mom said, a voice was heard to say, "Hello, Johnny, this is God. I just want to tell you I'm here." And to me, that's the whole essence of Alcoholics Anonymous. Whenever anyone anywhere reaches out, one of us goes. And it doesn't make any difference who goes. We all have the same message, which is, you're okay, and it's going to get better, and come with us, and we've been through it. And I hope that message never changes. I hope it doesn't get diluted with a bunch of other stuff. It's a very simple, very effective, very spiritual message. And I want to thank you for letting me come here tonight. I had another friend who died not too long ago, a little Indian guy who I sponsored, Harish, from Bombay, India. And whenever Harish came into my house, he used to put his hands together and say, "Namaste, Ken." And when he left, he'd say, "Namaste, Ken." And Namaste, translated, means the God in me recognizes the God in you. And it doesn't make any difference what surface problems we may have or what differences we may have. I am not about hurting you, and I know you're not about hurting me. So our primary purpose today is to take real good care of one another, because we're only on loan. I love you very much. Namaste.
Thank you, Ken. On behalf of the committee, we have a token of appreciation for coming out here. guess her voice is not here, and we have a special person coming to speak to us, so I'm going to sit down and hopefully he'll show up sometime. I'm not sure about this. He should be somewhere around here.
I think it's Mr. Wright.
It's Gumby.
I think I dated her sister.
Well, if this isn't a good enough clue that there's a costume dance tonight, some of you might want to check your sobriety date.